Entrepreneurial bug bit me, and I started my own advertising and PR firm. And I was doing very well until my biggest client went bankrupt. And suddenly I found out another very important business lesson, and that is, don't let one client be 90% of your business. So their bankruptcy basically put me out of business as well. So I went back to corporate America, worked my way up to become Executive Vice President, Director of Corporate Marketing for an international finance division of ITT Corporation. Went to night law school, got my law degree, and stayed in the corporate world until ITT was actually sold. This division was sold to Deutsche Bank. At that time I left. I decided to practice law for a while, and I practiced for about 20 minutes. I got it right. I didn't have to practice anymore. Actually, I was telling, where's the student government president? Did she leave? Okay. Well, she's interested in law, and I said, you know, it's a wonderful, wonderful education. I use it in business every single day. I hated the practice of law. So I left the practice of law and started a business called Susan Says. It's called Susan Says because women have done what Simon says all these years. It's time to do what Susan says. But actually, I started that business because I realized that I could do more to help women and their aspirations by communicating to them, which I feel is my strength, communicating to them the things that I had seen, both in the boardroom as the only female executive, as an attorney representing women in employment cases, as well as in divorce and child custody cases, watching the inequities in the judicial process. And I felt like I had a message to say, and that I could do more by helping women with the skills and the resources and the inspiration they needed to succeed, as opposed to trying to do it one-on-one. Then I had the opportunity to start SBTV, which I bought the domain name in May of 2003, and began to visualize what I wanted SBTV to be, and started bringing all the loose ends of my career together. Because as a journalist, and having grown up in small business, I always wanted to cover the good news small business stories. But that wasn't real attractive. And by the way, it still isn't real attractive to the mass media. I've heard that I work with ABC in New York. I cannot tell you how long it has taken me to get ABC to recognize that there are people who are interested in small business. It has taken me years to get to this point, but now we're starting to realize it. But I wanted to create an electronic media that focused on news and information just for this vast market called small business. More than 27 million small businesses in the United States, and they employ 2/3 of the entire workforce. And if you look at what the media covers today, it's all stories to do with big business, or they're the bad news stories about crime and such, and there's nothing out there to really help businesses. But then I also wanted, having had this experience of building this multi-million-dollar business, to help women understand what it takes to get to that level. So that brings me back now to the book, Girl's Guide to Building a $1 Million Business. So having crossed over that threshold successfully, I started doing the research to find out what are the limitations. Now there's a lot of research out there that will show you that women run into obstacles in business for things that are systemic. So there is the lack of access to capital. We know that women do not have equal access to capital. In fact, believe it or not, it was only a little over 20 years that women have been able to go to the bank and get a business loan for their business in their own name. So otherwise, they had to have their husband or a male partner or a brother or someone sign for that loan. So it's only been that long, which is scary. That's not that many years back. So access to capital is interesting. Venture capital, which helps women business owners grow more rapidly, or any business. Women get less than 3% of all the venture capital available in this country to fund their business growth. So access to capital is huge. Access to markets is huge. So we know that women only get, there's an executive order that President Clinton signed years ago that mandates that federal agencies spend 5% of their contracting budgets with women-owned businesses. And it still falls below 3%. Despite all the progress we've made, it still falls below 3%. that goes to women-owned businesses. So you think about the billions and billions and billions of dollars the government spends in buying stuff, and less than 3% of that gets spent with women-owned businesses. So we know there's the struggle of access to markets. There's also a struggle with access to technical resources, because our society has not trained women to be entrepreneurs. There aren't a lot of role models. And when we see in the media, when we see women who are in successful leadership positions, like anybody see The Devil Wears Prada? Mm-hmm. The media depicts us as either a vixen or a villain. And I assure you that most of us are neither. In fact, most of the women I know who are building multi-million-dollar businesses are the most gracious, giving, caring women that you'll ever meet in your life. And what they're doing is they're changing the dynamic of the business paradigm. So they are actually building businesses that are family-friendly, because they understand the nuances that impact our lives as women. So they're building family-friendly environments. They're giving back to their communities. They're getting a voice in the political process, because I hate to say it, but you know what? It takes cash out of your checkbook in order to get access to the political system. And women historically have not been willing to write those checks. So they're getting access to the political process. They're also building economic freedom for themselves and their families. So they're giving their children, their families, better environments in which to grow and to develop. But the one thing that I found so fascinating is in the women that I interviewed at very lower level stages of their business growth, or maybe they're even just still in a traditional job, or perhaps they never worked outside the home. When you start talking to them about making money, it scares them. Because we're taught as women, as little girls, don't worry your pretty little head about money. Women don't talk about money because that's greedy, that's evil, and women who care about money, they're overly ambitious and aggressive, and they are the capital B word. But I'll tell you, what I learned is I like making money. And it's not just to fund my shoe wardrobe, although my husband definitely would disagree with that. He says if I come home with another pair of shoes, we're going to have to add on to the house. In fact, he made the mistake of counting my shoes one day, and I said, no, I don't think that's right. He said, oh, yes, it is. And I said, oh, I'm sure I have more than that. It's not just about that. It's about having economic freedom of choice. And the period of time I did practice law, I did represent a lot of women in child custody cases, or divorce cases, or abuse cases. And I would see them sitting in their chair in front of my desk with tears of desperation in their eyes, saying to me, what am I going to do? I stepped out of the career world, or maybe they never had a career. Now their husband has taken off with the 22-year-old secretary. And in Missouri, good luck if you get alimony, and you hope the guy's a stand-up guy who pays child support. And so I watched women, as many of them made a choice to stay in an abusive relationship because they didn't have the economic wherewithal to make that choice for their good and for the good of their families. One of the stories I did was about a woman who actually had created a business and won an award for the Welfare to Work program. And she had left her home in the middle of the night with her children in the backseat of the car because her husband had threatened them with a knife. She waited until he passed out and she left with nothing more than the clothes on their backs. They ended up living on the streets for 9 months. The children were taken away from her and put into custody. And by the time I met her, she had her children back. She had started a very small little lawn care business.